Okay, welcome everybody to this interesting workshop on training the next generation of academics, students and professionals, transforming and democratizing global education and change. The topic of today is becoming global corporate academics, and the material points of view are covered in the particular title of this particular talk, which is exploring key masteries in research, teaching, integration of knowledge, and applications. I am Patrick Ezepue, associated with City University Enugu, International Center for Research and Human Development, Dominican University Ibadan, and also Afri World Higher Education and Research Observatory. In today's talk and workshop, we welcome dignitaries, academics that have been doing a lot of work in this space over the years, and actually we've been collaborating for all these years on issues related to improving research, teaching, learning, assessments, consulting, and community services across academia, industry, government, and wider society settings. Therefore, today we have amongst us as one of the facilitators, Professor Adiwala Sholari, Professor of Mathematics, former Director General of National Mathematical Center, Abuja in Nigeria, also UNESCO Distinguished Professor of Mathematics. He is a leader in this space in many ways. We welcome Sholari because his interest cut across pedagogical innovations, mathematical sciences research and their applications, especially as regards resolving global challenging problems. In 2008, there was an event he put together on the role of mathematical sciences in addressing globally challenging problems, and he invited me from UK here as one of the keynote speakers. Since then, he's been working across fields, and more recently, the training of gifted children in mathematical sciences. You're welcome, Professor Sholari. We also welcome Professor Henry Orochukwu, Professor of Public Health and Nutritional Biochemistry, City University Enugu, currently the Dean of Medical Sciences in King David's University of Medical Sciences at Ebonyi State, a top consultant himself in medicine. He is a consummate corporate academic. You're welcome, Professor Henry Orochukwu, to this event. We also welcome Dr. Adibora Ojo, who is the Director of Teaching and Learning within the Geography subject area at the University of Lincoln, UK. Dr. Ojo has been working with us for so many years now. We've got a lot of joint publications. His interest again cuts across the entire, Cure Helix, which we call the Quadruple Helix: academia, industry, government, and wider society. Professor Nnamdi Madichie is a professor of international marketing and entrepreneurship, Nnamdi Azikiwe University. He's also been working across these fields in several universities in Africa and other places. And he's not necessarily available today, but we are recognizing his contributions. I also welcome all of us that are on this particular event for coming. I appreciate your time and every contribution you are going to make in this event. The structure of this event is simple. We have decided to make the key questions or learning objectives parts of the talk. So the talk itself and the workshop has 5 journeys, really. 4 main journeys in terms of the 4 main questions on the flyer for the event, which we need to cover, and then a part 5 that is a plenary. Okay. I also want to welcome, before we start, Professor Odo, Professor of Real Estate, former Deputy Vice Chancellor at University of Uyo, former Dean of Real Estate, Faculty of Environmental Sciences, who also collaborated with me in supervising a PhD on embedding entrepreneurship in real estate subject area. Welcome, Professor Odo, to this event. And all of us, all academics, students, professionals, everybody is welcome. I want to start by periscoping the key aims and benefits of the workshop. Well, this is a generic kind of ideas about all our workshops, not just this one. Our interest is in mastering basic laws of success and also, masteries in teaching, research, and learning as applies to individuals, professionals, academics, policymakers, senior members of society, and so on and so forth. We intend that this workshop addresses the needs of different stakeholders in the corporate academic space, by which I mean all knowledge workers in academia, in industry, government settings, as well as wider society who are using effective knowledge making to solve problems in the real world. So that it's not necessarily just about academics. So lecturers, undergraduate and postgraduate students have a lot to benefit from this, because they will be learning how their fields of learning or subject areas can support them with expertise in order to address challenging problems in society with their skills, which improves their employability, enhances their career progress, and make them more successful. Young faculty and professionals are also to benefit, because if the management of learning, the education, training, learning, research, teaching, and applications in higher institutions, for educational institutions, does not really ground them properly with the skills, the skill sets that should complement the technical know-how, they will be seriously deficient when they graduate and have to grapple with real-life situations and problems in their various organizations or in their own organizations if they choose to become entrepreneurs. Senior academics in different fields will benefit because they have a better handle on how to supervise, apart from teaching and researching, how to supervise students in a way that all these skills are actually operative. Research scientists across the Helix, very important, because these are also the collaborators that work with academics to fix problems in industry, problems in government departments, ministries, and agencies, and problems in wider society. So they will benefit from our ideas in this workshop about how knowledge can be brought together or integrated when problems are facing the world. Of course, that we'll also talk about CEOs, the MDs, the SLTs, senior leadership teams in various organizations interested in achieving what we call the OCLOC vision. That vision, I will articulate that vision later on during the talk. Officers in higher educational institutions in charge of careers, advisory for student and student services will benefit from this, including also heads of directors of centers of entrepreneurial studies and other directorates in institutions of higher learning. Professionals from different ministries, departments, and agencies in government will also benefit, because they will need these skills to be able to be smart in the ways they operate within organizations as entrepreneurs or within their own setups as entrepreneurs. Of course, more importantly, the staff from startups, SMEs, because they form about 90% of the backbone of most economies, especially developing countries. So this particular workshop addresses their needs for bringing knowledge together. Of course, then policymakers across, again, the Helix, especially government, who make the policies that academics and other knowledge workers will follow in trying to use their knowledge in solving problems. So the learning outcomes we are working on are just 4 key learning outcomes, and they are precisely the key questions we posed on the flyer for this event. So we want to be coherent and consistent so that we don't get diverted. There's a lot to talk about and a lot to think about. So our approach is to keep to the knitting and just take those things apart. The first one is how do many developing countries remain so after many decades of independence? So this is a puzzle that actually motivates the workshop. How can knowledge workers master new sets of Riot skills? Riot here means research, integration of knowledge, applications, and teaching. I am not really getting teaching to a lower status. Actually, the reason I put teaching T at the end is because you can teach all of them. So you need to be able to talk about teaching research, the teaching integration of knowledge, teaching applications, and also the scholarship of teaching itself, which happens in the faculties of education in the world. These skills profoundly impact wealth and job creation across, again, academia, industry, government, and wider society. We've been repeating these 4 spaces Therefore, we want to bundle them up and call them the Quadruple Helix, or fondly the Cure Helix. That will make up part 2. Part 1 is the first question or the first objective. For part 3, we are looking at how can academics operate in a more integrative way across what we call the 7-fold or 8-fold ways that can enable them to unleash such impact in the Cure Helix, to achieve fast ascent to senior positions with a big bang, technically and financially. That will be part 3. In effect, which is part 4, we are looking at how traditional academics can become global corporate academics. We are also going to explore the entailments of global corporate academicism itself as a construct. We need them to be able to effectively professionalize their disciplines in order to achieve the intent of being corporate academics. But also, not only just the academics, the professionals themselves can also become global leaders and change masters, together with the academies they collaborate with, by becoming also research-driven, by also mastering the Riot spheres, so that even if when somebody is in industry, the person is operating, wearing different hats according to the depth of problem they are solving. So if a problem requires original exploration, then they have to wear their research hats, and so on and so forth. And typically, they have to integrate knowledge from different fields in getting best models and best solutions to the problems they are working on for their organizations, and so on and so forth. Application is basically what everybody does, and of course, teaching again is what all of us do. Professionals do their teaching as well when they're actually training people under them, presenting materials to their management boards and the audiences they are serving, their client organizations, and so on and so forth. So teaching is important for everybody. So this workshop is not limited to academics. It's all-encompassing by the way we have positioned it anyway. The 5th part will be on a plenary session involving all of us. And the key focus is to interrogate global challenges in the Cure Helix through the lenses of Riot excellence, and of course through an encasing system of 5 forces that contain the Riot excellence as one element. We are moving into part 1 now. Our approach will be to cover a part and then have enough time within the same part to do some discussions where our facilitators will also come in with views in order to enable all of us to see different points of view. So I will just try and use questions in trying to tease out different kinds of thinkings around the issue of why are we stagnating in development in most developing countries. You can take a focus of Nigeria, Africa, or Sub-Saharan Africa, and other parts of the world that are south of what we call the global south. Some of the questions we want to pose on this will be something like, is the current traditional model of education and training effective really, given previous and current Web 5.0 state of the world, or even given recent developments associated with the global pandemic? These are questions we need to think about. It's extremely likely that there are areas where the traditional model still is effective, but there could be a lot of other areas where it isn't. So these are things for us to think through. The other question we are looking at is what staples of excellence are currently in play across the Riot spheres, including publications. And the question there is, isn't there a need for urgent changes in these, including journal rankings and other perspectives? And then one other thing we may look at again in this case will be, why are higher educational institutions, well, in bracket I also include pre-tertiary institutions, because you have to start growing these things from the base, the secondary schools, the primary school, the kindergarten. But let's focus today mainly on the tertiary education. So why are those institutions heavily under-resourced? Mainly in developing countries. Even in developed countries, they are also under-resourced, to be honest. And what can we do to resolve this? These are the kind of questions I want us to go through There are other ones, because we are continuing with this. There are other questions. Are we effectively mobilizing key stakeholders, for instance, for joined up thinking in the problem spaces across again the QLX? If so, how? If not so, how not? And who are these stakeholders after all? How do we bring in their voices in crafting effective solutions to local, national, continental, and global problems? Do we adequately use, for example, techniques in user research and service design, those tools to figure out the best solutions? We can think about curriculum design, specific problems in different industry sectors, and the QHelix generally. After this, we'll go into interactive discussions by all of us. But what I want to do is, and again, at the end, we just bring it together in a very brief plenary, interrogating the global challenges in the QHelix, particularly from the lens of this very part one, which is about underdevelopment in the developing countries of the world. So let me start by saying a few things from the beginning of this part, and then so that I can yield space for those kind of discussions to happen. Because today is very likely we are going to get a sense of fireworks, really, when experts other than us are involved. My take on the traditional model of education is simple. It is the fact that it is to a large extent dysfunctional. I wouldn't say grossly dysfunctional, because that would be, not recognizing some pockets of excellence happening in that space. But it is dysfunctional. The telltale evidence of this is simple. If a country like Nigeria got her independence in 1960 and just about 6 decades, 60 years after this independence, we are still labeled developing. And we know we are developing. We don't have a good manufacturing base. We still process commodities and export. We're not really processing most of them and manufacturing them and preserving them within our own country. So the heavy value adds that come from owning those things are actually owned by developed economies to which those things are exported. And those things come back as finished goods, and we pay exorbitant prices for some of them. So I don't think it is controvertible that the model of education that supports that level of underdevelopment is dysfunctional. So, but you may have your views on this. The point is, what leads to this, in my view, is that the model of education that we are practicing today is too insular, located within disciplines that are silos in the way they operate. There's not enough exchange of currency between even cognate disciplines, surprisingly. And therefore, the integration of knowledge that should be able to support effective mobilization of knowledge in the world is lacking. But ironically, because the criteria for getting promoted within the field are there for academics to use, strategically they have to therefore do those things to be promoted. So they have to now pander more towards research, their publications, and funnily enough, those publications are then classified again by mostly people outside the environment in what is called rankings. And those rankings have always been there, but they support the development of the developed world, but don't do that for developing countries. Therefore, there is a need for us to rethink whether those rankings are actually important for us. That's exactly what I'm trying to say in this case. In terms of the staples of excellence that I think are important to focus on is a more balanced play across those Riot phases, so that if somebody is working as an academic, for instance, and the person needs to be promoted, we have to make sure there is enough scoring going on under each of those labels: research, integration of knowledge, applications, and teaching. If I were to own a university today, I will give them all of them 25%. Because within the same 25%, you can still publish your 1,000 papers. as long as those papers are making sense. You can still do your knowledge integration. You can still do your applications and your teaching. But to skew the criteria so much that sometimes academics can actually lock themselves up in a room and start manufacturing papers to get promoted. And most of those papers are not going beyond the three normal standards of excellence, theory development, some kind of contribution to knowledge, and some feeble attempt to think of translating the ideas to practice, which is not happening enough, and that's where we are. So this is what I'm going to say about this as well. So the question therefore is, isn't there a need for urgent changes in these, including those journal rankings? Isn't there a need for a new model of publishing to be resurrected by academics in developing countries themselves? Something they call their own, and something that actually goes beyond the criteria that everybody has been using at the moment. These are things we are also going to see how they can be done. In terms of why academics are heavily on, institutions are heavily under-resourced, it comes back to the same problem. If academics do not work enough on the other three arms of the core university business, because that is exactly what these four things are called: core university business. By university, I mean, tertiary institutions. You cannot fly. If an airplane is meant to fly on four wings, you cannot give 80% of the power of the engine to just one of those arms. That plane will nosedive. This simple analogy does not even come near to be appreciated by academics in these climes. It's a simple analogy from everyday situation. We can't even apply that analogy to say we need a rebalancing of those criteria. So you produce integrally, holistically excellent academics, integrally and holistically excellent professionals, because all the professionalism still flows from these four arms of the core university business. Because the professionals apply as well, they do everything. That is my worry here, that we have not even bothered about that, and we are trying to copycat standards and rankings that are foisted on us by external players who know better how to use those standards than us. And therefore, we do a lot of publications. We can't walk the talk of our research. We cannot link our work to real problems in society and start solving them aggressively. We don't do that. And that's the problem we have. So, and if we don't have the capacity to bring knowledge together and solve problems, where is the money going to come from to resource the institutions? Because the money has to come from clients paying you some money to do some work for them. If you take a simple example of the vaccine, coronavirus vaccines, think about how the University of Oxford, working with AstraZeneca, sprinted the creation of this, the AstraZeneca vaccine in almost 10 months. A process that typically takes about 6 to 8 years when pre-COVID. That shows that their own operationalization of these rankings is much better than our own. We need to ask ourselves questions about how the entire African continent, which of course, to be honest about it, has more than, only Nigeria alone has 45,000 professors. I just want to give you that example. Multiply by 4, you get the number of professors in Africa alone. But no single coronavirus vaccine. We are depending on handouts from developed countries. It's so clear that we need to change again. And how do you change it? You need to stubbornly create your own system, remain in that system, perfect the system, and help your continent, help your countries, help your own universities to be able to draw income from the way you write your grants across the entire 4 layers and across the Quadruple Helix itself. If we do not do this, I'm afraid we are going to remain perennially underdeveloped. And that's a very, very, scary prospect for the African continent and for developing countries of the global south. This is my worry here. And I think you share this worry. Let me just cover this part and then we'll go into discussions. Because there are questions, so I don't want to dwell too much on them. I want to throw them as questions and we'll talk about them. Are we effectively mobilizing key stakeholders? No, because the academics are not incentivized, isn't it? They have the capability. There's no doubt about that. The academies are so sound, and the professionals they train are also good enough in creating the value when they go into companies, while the academies themselves cannot create the value themselves when they're in the universities. They cannot generate revenue. They depend on government providing everything for the salaries. It's not on. It's not on. If we cannot be solving problems that can enable us to connect with the real world, generate income on top of whatever funding government is providing, we are going to continue to lay blames on government. I'm not saying government is doing well. They're not doing well, but we need to help ourselves by reinventing the way we do stuff. And that is why I'm saying here, we are also not doing well. When we talk about the stakeholders, we know them already. I've listed them out at the beginning of this talk. But what is important is how do we work with them? What mechanisms can we use? What tools can we use? One of them I just flagged up is user research. I want to please invite us now to look at these questions and just engage in some kind of discussions to flesh them out. So anybody, maybe our facilitators, can shape in some ideas first, then the whole flock, and we can discuss these ideas further. If I need also, at the end of it, I bring it together in the plenary and we'll move to part 2. Is that okay that way?
Yeah, okay.
Are we okay to reflect on these questions I asked? I've just given a background, a kind of a general background.
Patrick, that seems okay.
Okay.
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay. So any views, you can take any question. You don't have to take the questions seriatim. You can take any questions that come to your mind, so that it's informal but it's fluid, in order to touch on most of the ideas, and we can now wrap up in a plenary for that.
Yes, can I come in?
Oh yes, please.
Thank you very much, Adewale Shilari. Let me just say it's my pleasure to be part of this discussion. It's something that is really burning in our hearts. We've been talking about this for many years. If I would give myself as an example,
yes.
When I was a lecturer at IFE, I was teaching statistics, where I taught algebra and statistics. I would say that my courses, especially in my last years at IFE, I taught those courses with live data from the industry. They were not data from textbooks. Yes, we had textbooks we were using, but I was using data from the industry, from my own consultancy. So, and my students knew where I do not have data from the industry. If I'm teaching a topic that I didn't have data from the industry, then I made the students generate the data to first go out to do a survey or to generate the data that we're going to use to now conduct the course. So at every stage, they're able to see the application and the importance of what we're teaching. So the point is, there's a need now to have a serious reorientation in the approach to teaching and learning in the university system, tertiary institutions in Africa or in Nigeria, especially. A situation where at the beginning of the course, a student already knows why he's sitting in that class. He knows why that course fits into the whole program and the purpose of that course in that program, in his program or her program. That will make a lot of impact. The student will be able to understand. So all this idea of just memorizing and coming to give points and then will be out of the way. It's important that we actually have a reorientation in our teaching approach. To say that even as a mathematician, I have consultancies in the industry. When I was at IFE, and I was the only staff of that department that was working with UNIFEX then, that's the University of IFE consult. So that's my little contribution for now.
Thank you very much, Professor Sholari. Dr. Adibolo Joe is also about to say something to add to this. Dr. Joe?
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, Professor Ezekwe, and thank you for your insightful contribution, Professor Sholari. I really want to thank the organizers of this very important program. Just a little bit of contribution to that introduction from Professor Ezekwe. I think there are lots of things that you touched on, but I just want to kind of, contribute and to two key areas. First is the understanding that we live in a century that is creating profound changes to our society and to our economy, whether we look at it, the African economy, the Nigerian economy, or even the global economy. So there are new forms of work and working patterns emerging. And these are nations are increasingly interdependent in a way that they've never been, before. New powerhouses are emerging in different places. National budgets are increasingly being drafted by large multinational companies and corporations. So, and technology changes and developments, are also radically changing our everyday lived experiences. New professions are also emerging. And so it's absolutely important that our higher educational institutions are aware of the profound changes taking place and are not left behind as our world changes. So in this sort of rapidly changing and fluid world, new ideas, new developments are seldom based on one disciplinary approach. And I think you hit on that point. But a convergence of, of thoughts, convergence of methods and techniques to create innovations from the margins of various disciplines. I think this is absolutely critical. I think it is important. It's an area that I'm hoping we will be able to really trash out today, because disciplinary boundaries are shifting, changing, and the convergence between disciplines is a growing feature of higher education, research, and indeed research-informed teaching, and the possibility of that recording impact in industry. So this is something that I am hoping that we can trash out more clearly today. But I think it is important because our world is changing and changing rapidly, and it is important for higher educational institutions to move with that change by recognizing the fluidity, the fluid pace at which the world is changing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Joe. That's a wonderful contribution because you covered quite reinforced most of the things we are talking about. You talked about new profound changes that are happening across the world in almost every aspect of learning and professional work, whether it's the research, the teaching, or applications. Also reinforcing what Sholari mentioned about the need to anchor all the things we are doing in learning and teaching in education on real world problems. Okay, and these are the kind of directions. Of course, there are a lot more to say later on this as we proceed. I want to recognize there's somebody who was also trying to talk before. That's Professor Henry Orochukwu wants to add to this discussion. Thank you, Henry. The floor is yours.
Yes. Thank you, Professor Patrick. Thank you, everybody here. This calls for a very deep reflection. For me, I haven't experiences in Nigeria and having studied overseas too, and coming back to Nigeria again, and having interfaced with the community by nature of my job and the student community, I think our problem is refocusing into a culturally sensitive educational system. We are still highly westernized, from the kindergarten to the primary to the secondary, and then of course to the tertiary education. We are completely westernized. What do there is as examples in primary schools? Apple, that a child may never see even after secondary school. And so if we begin to think the cultural sensitivity of our educational system, we are going to understand education as a way of solving public problems, as a way of maintaining the dignity of human beings, as a way of intervening in issues that will improve human welfare, as a way of projecting the economy of a nation. This is what I think the Chinese has done. As a medical practitioner for over 22 years now, I still see that when you want to give examples to your patients of, for instance, what they should take or what they shouldn't do at home, you are still going to be looking majorly on the foreign examples. Why? Because nobody has taken time to profile and characterize the abundant, for instance, food substances in our environment. And so it becomes increasingly difficult for people not to practice the routine. I mean, COVID came. The guy that worked in Oxford and then discovered the vaccine, or part of the lead team and the lead investigators for the vaccines, did his housemanship in my hospital in Ebonyi State. Left after his house job to UK. He trained at Abia State University. That's a local content. The same knowledge he applied because the system allowed him for robust research. So the moment we begin to see the researcher and the policymakers and the community end users being on the same page, the better we have a transformed educational system. Now, there's a vicious cycle of poverty where whether it's a federal university, state or private university, are dependent on subventions to survive. Either an intervention from TED fund, intervention from federal government, or intervention from the state government. Or in the case of private universities, an exorbitant fees from parents in order to survive. So the lecturers are just there as normal staff. Nobody thinks about how do we look inwards to solve our problem. Solving problems in educational system. There are a lot of programs that have been created to interface with the community, but how well are they implemented? For instance, in people that are in engineering or some other professional courses, they go for the industrial attachment. Now it's just a routine. You just go there, sign your logbook, you come back. But the essence was expose these people to industrial experiences so that when they come, having had a foundation in the first and second year, they'll be able to now begin to think independently and begin to look into their system to see how can we now do with all this knowledge I've accumulated. So in my third year, I went for industrial training. What am I going to do in my fourth and fifth year possibly to now come out into the society to begin to look into the societal problems? But when it becomes a routine, just take your logbook and you assign, you come back. So what happens? You come out of the school, you don't even know what to do. Germans have started this by exposing everybody to industrial experiences, even before you start the school, so that when you now see this is the practical aspect of it, you come and now learn the theory behind it. So I think we should come back home and begin to see the interrelationship between medicine and mathematics, between food science and medicine. between social marketing, marketing of products, and the food choices of individuals, which will naturally influence their health at an adolescent age and possibly give rise to the genetic formations for the subsequent generations. These are all interrelated. So if somebody did biology, the person that is studying food science does not know the interrelationship. So until we begin to look at that point of view and not rating ourselves because there is a standard that has been developed in America that must be used to judge people all over the world. The educational system must be system specific, context specific, cultural sensitivity. That is what, these are things that are lacking in our own system. And until we start to look into that, I don't think we will ever improve in our own generation. So I think that this is a stimulation for us, and that the actual audience will not just be for us, it will cut across the traditional institutions asking questions. And unfortunately, the whole of Africa is looking up to Nigeria as the major exporter of human resources to now drive the whole Africa into a change. And the moment we get it right from any part of Nigeria, and again, when we look at Nigeria, we're looking at the whole country. That shouldn't be. Innovations can start from a state. The states, there's no state in Nigeria that's less than about 3 million people. And this 3 million is about 2 countries in different continents. So why can't we look at a state and use a state as a model? People will copy when they see it's working. So I think at the end of this workshop, we can now come to apply what we have actually learned to now taking a state, for instance, working with a more comfortable governance and environment to see how from the policymakers we can actually revolutionize education. When they see education as something that will solve a problem, that will improve the economy, that will solve community problems, that government will buy it, because in a year or 2 or 3, the government can see results. And for a government that is running a 2-10 of 8 years, that government will be very comfortable to now see that it is looking inwards to solving the problem in its state without running into Abuja for handouts. Well, we'll continue to put ideas as we proceed, but this is what I think, being on ground and being locally involved in this part of the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Henry. You have really, was a panoramic overview of a lot of the ideas that we are playing with. Okay. I think, is that Sholari, yes?
Yes.
Yes, Sholari, yes.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank all the contributors. I gave example of myself at the beginning, and
yes.
Now I want to talk about the main issues, and that is about the issue of teaching, research, and extension, as it is called in some places, or community service, or consultancy. I think there's a big problem about the rating system. And there's actually the need for orientation again along this line. Yes, scholarship about publications, research, leading to publications. Yes, they are important. They are germane to the academic life. But we should not forget the origin of university. University, it's about problem solving. University started, that's why you have the University of Bologna, and you had all those universities started by people who are trying to solve problems of the society. So problems identified in the society are now solved and developed. Solution is brought back to the society, and then the research continues because you don't want the problem to arise again before you start. So you now keep advancing knowledge on it so that it keeps thinking of the future. And so we have to just address that. There's a need for us to address that now in this part of the world, to see that it's not just about the publications, it's about also the impact on the community. When I say community, I'm not talking of my local government or my village. Community is about the global community. The applicability of the result of your research, the benefit to the community is very important. And talking about this issue of IT for students and so on. Yes, students are saying to the industries with no, because the problem have not been generated from those industries. If the lecturers themselves are in good consonance with the industries, when students are going there, they are going there to go and be part of the problem that have been identified and they are going to solve. And patents begin to roll out from that.
It's true.
If I'm going to say, as far as I'm concerned, we all know that from senior lecturer and above, honestly, if I have a university, if I'm to be in charge of a university today, from senior lecturer and above, what you generate, what you bring into the community, to the university system, must be more than what you take. Lecturer, assistant lecturer, lecturer one, those are lecturer two, they are training positions. We will train you on how to do research, how to teach, and how to also do extension, or how to do consultancy, or how to do industrial research, depending on which field you are. And it doesn't matter, even if you are a student of history, if you are a lecturer in history, as a profession, as a subject area, it exists because the society needed it. Any subject area that says that there is no application in the community, in the society, then should be scrapped. That means the society doesn't need it. If you say you are an organization or a department and you are just to exist and teach and do research, and there's no benefit that can come to the community or the global community, then I mean, it should be closed. So there should be a way, the system itself should train the teachers, the lecturers, the faculty, how to use their knowledge to benefit the community. And from there, because it's all about knowing how to identify gap in the community, there's always a gap that your own knowledge can fill, and only your knowledge can fill it perfectly. And when you fill it, when your knowledge, use your knowledge to fill that gap, then the community will say thank you. It's like building a bridge over a gulf. When you build a bridge, all those who are going to be going on the bridge, they will say thank you. And that thank you is the revenue that comes to the system. So the people must be taught and trained to do that. And after we have trained them to do that, then we expect a return. So by the time they become senior lecturer and above, we expect that their contribution to the system must be more than what they benefit, because the system has invested in them. It's unfortunate that ASU and federal government, they don't even understand themselves. They don't even know what it's all about. I mean, what university system is all about. They don't understand. The federal government itself, the government does not even know how to make demand, there are appropriate demand requests from the institutions. What should be their what do I call it? What should be their output? The kind of output that should warrant all the investment they're asking government to invest, because the people on the government side also are not as knowledgeable. So thank you. That's my contribution.
Thank you very much. I will very shortly come to Okechukwu. What we need to do, because some of the points we are making on this part are also ricocheted. I mean, they carry through the other parts. What we can do is to also, keep it a bit brief, and then move on from there, because we're going to get into them again, because it's almost like a secular kind of something, because all these things are interwoven, the connections are very, very heavy, so we'll be able to cover. Okechukwu will say something now. Okechukwu, please, you were raising your hands.
Yes, thank you so much, Professor Patrick. You may not know it, but you are on the vanguard of a major movement that will change how things are done across the universities in our land and in the whole of Africa. So I commend your efforts on what SSGS is doing. I wholly identify with what Professor Sholari just said. The main people to focus on at this point is the teaching community. It's important to focus on them, get them to understand what they are there to do. And when they begin to do it, there will be a major shift in how society sees things and does things. You know, when a lecturer thinks that all he's there to do is to maybe pass on garbage and then get promoted, write some kind of article that has no meaning anywhere apart from for his or her promotion, things can't work that way. People must be made to begin to see whatsoever they teach as important aspects of solving the problems of society. Anything that the lecturer teaches, whatever the subject, whatever the program, they have to themselves believe in it, see it as the place that they can stay to make contributions to society, real contributions. They don't need to be elsewhere. They don't need to be business people or whatever. But they can see the society's problems, solve it. The area that they cannot solve, then synergy becomes important. They begin to see themselves from different fields coming together to solve one problem. It's done in engineering. There's no house that one field builds. The civil people, the structures, the electrical, all manner of fields come in building a house and making it beautiful at the end of the day. That has to begin to happen in our universities. And it has to start from reorientating the lecturers. Exactly what I think the SSGS Academy is now doing. So I commend your efforts. Thank you so much. And thanks to everyone.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Honestly, I expected fireworks, but I got far more than fireworks, to be honest. This is a very wonderful suite of contributions from all participants. And everybody was on point, addressing these issues from various perspectives, even in their own discipline. This is really coming together for us, and I appreciate all of us. And what I want to do now is to know, is there any other person that wants to say something, especially among those that haven't said anything for now? Or if not now, then maybe they may say something when we go to another path. What I want to do, let me pause to check whether there is anybody that has something new to contribute. Then we move. I can do a kind of quick plenary of this, summary of this section. Which, because we've almost combined the plenary session with all the questions as we go along. So I can just bring it together. There are almost 12 points that all of us have mentioned only in this part alone. So if I want to bring it together by looking at a plenary session for this part, in terms of interrogating global challenges in the Quadruple Helix, through the lenses of excellence in research, integration of knowledge, applications and teaching, and what we call the 5 forces that actually form part of the next part. Let me just take it bottom up now, so that we can rush through, move through the whole points. What came out of here was that there's a serious amount of need for industry-focused, problem-based pedagogy within the educational settings. Examples from industry, examples from government, examples from problems that are challenging in society, in communities, local, national, continental, global, has been seriously mentioned. For instance, Professor Sholari emphasized the need for reorientation in all these areas, mentioning that his own approach was to actually take those examples from industry, which is exactly what I used to do. Because I remember that in 1992 to 93, I formed Sigma X Statistical Consulting, in my university, in the now UNIZIC, former Anambra State University, those days. And we are using statistics to solve real life problems. A majority of my examples were oven fresh problems from my clients, and that actually echoed once Sholari was talking about that. And for a long time, Sholari and I have been solving problems using the combination of numerical and statistical knowledge. And beyond that, Dr. Ojo talked too much about the profound changes that are happening. These changes are linked with 5.0, the changes in technology, increase in bandwidth, elaboration of the role of the computer in the life of AI and all that. A lot of things are happening. And then he mentioned again the importance of making sure that there is a convergence of methods, a convergence of disciplinary approaches in addressing these challenges. He actually touched on what we typically call red lax innovations in teaching, in research, teaching, learning, assessments, consulting and community services. And these assessments should be assessments for and of learning, because they're not exactly the same. You have to teach concepts, but you have to apply concepts. So, and then of course, he talked about the cultural sensitivity Professor Henry talked about the cultural sensitivity of the education, the context of the education being very important. And if we have been aware of this, we should not over depend on standards that were actually created elsewhere. We can take something good in those things, but we need to go home and redesign what should be the goals of education within our own climes, addressing our own problems, so that when we characterize our own food crops, for instance, we be able to know how to calibrate the nutrients coming out from our own food crops, instead of relying on foreign goods that are manufactured from the same food crops when we've not even known what they can do for us, and so on and so forth. That was a very eye-opening kind of a lot of all these contributions, using examples that are appropriate. And then, of course, we talked about moving into robust research and the fact that we need to teach and train the younger ones, and that when we are gaining more experience and rising through the ranks, we need to make sure we are bringing into the institutions more than we are taking, which is precisely my model, to be honest. In all the relationships I have in universities, I don't take a salary. I generate money and I take some percentage agreed with institution. That's the way I operate. And it takes confidence to operate that way. And it takes a lot of being in the street to understand the dynamics of how to make money across the Quadruple Helix. And if we can coach people on those models, each university becomes almost self-independent. Government subventions become just, necessary additions or kind of reinforcement, instead of being the main deal that everybody is waiting for, and so on and so forth. We're going to come to all those things again. We'll talk about interfacing with communities, industry attachment, being robust or not. Interestingly, some people that had real industry attachment can do much better than those who don't, and so on and so forth. I want us to move now to just go through this. I wanted to emphasize on this point number 6, the fact that when we design things, when we design products, services, which we typically call offerings in society, no matter what aspect of society, no matter the industry sector, there are about 70 key industry sectors in the world anyway. Some of them is education itself is an industry sector, manufacturing, telecommunications, consumer goods, transport, retail, all these are industry sectors. Agriculture, finance, banking and financial services. So if we actually are solving problems across these industry sectors, to what extent do we really use the tools of user research and service design? Because it's a very, very important field. So that if you see your students as users, as clients, metaphorically, design curricula that actually can help them. But you need to understand where they're coming from, their pain points, What gives them, more problem at a certain level, maybe first year, second year, because of their levels of learning or, preparation? Are you able to actually co-design things with them, do what is called user research, understand their journeys in the learning process? We are not doing those things. We just design curricula by bringing topics together. Go to NUC, minimum standard. It's just about bringing topics. This is topics you must teach. Nobody cares about whether you design the modules using these principles or not. This is new, not completely new. It's already happening in advanced societies, but we are not. While we're busy trying to meet their standards in publication, we're not even realizing that they're doing all these things. That is why the societies function much better than our own. So that is what I wanted to contribute in terms of additional tools we need to use in revisiting those areas of dysfunctions in our systems, whether educational system, any other system, industry sector, and so on and so forth. So we are going to flesh these things out later on at some point. I think we've covered this part very well. I want us to move to part 2